Every year at this time, I'm reminded of a homily that I gave about 30 years ago at St. Joseph's Church in Highbridge. It was the evening mass on Ascension Thursday. And when it was over and most people had left, I saw the priest talking to a woman who didn't look happy. And when the priest came into the sacristy, he told me that that woman was upset because of something that I had said. She was referring to my comment about a passage in the first reading for that Mass, a reading from the beginning of the Acts of the Apostles, in which Jesus, 40 days after his resurrection, is speaking to his apostles. And this was the passage. When they had gathered together, they asked him, Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel? He answered them, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons that the Father has established by his own authority. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And when he had said this, as they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him from their sight. And in my homily, I said that Catholics who read or hear that passage do not have to take it literally. St. Luke, who wrote the Acts of the Apostles, was describing there a unique event in human history, something that had never happened before and would never happen again, an event with no comparison, and also an event that he himself had not witnessed. So perhaps he was using the image of Jesus physically disappearing into the clouds because it was the only way that he could express this astounding event. But the priest said that that woman told him that for 60 years she had believed that Jesus physically rose into the sky, and she didn't want some deacon coming along now and telling her otherwise. Well, I was sorry that the woman hadn't spoken to me. First of all, because I didn't want to upset her with my homily, and also because I would have reassured her that she was free to visualize that passage, what Luke described there, however she wished. Now, normally, in the dioceses of New Jersey, we observe the Ascension of the Lord on the Thursday before the seventh Sunday of Easter, 40 days after Easter. That would have been May 21st this year. But because public masses are not being celebrated during the pandemic, the bishops in New Jersey have moved the observance to this weekend, when it is always observed in most of the country. So here I am again, talking about this image of Jesus rising into the clouds. What kind of trouble can I get into? Well, I'm not looking for trouble. So I'm not going to tell you how to picture what Luke described. That's up to you. What is important is not exactly how the ascension took place, but what the ascension means. It doesn't matter whether Jesus rose into the sky, walked through the locked door, or simply vanished. Since his resurrection, his body had clearly been taken into a new condition in which it was not confined by time or space. We know that from the details of his appearances on earth after his resurrection. How he finally ended his visible, audible presence on earth is not important. Jesus' ascension is not about his absence at all, but about his presence. It's not about his leaving, but about his remaining with us, as he says in the gospel reading for this weekend, until the end of the age, I will be with you. The birth of Jesus, as some theologians say, was the marriage of God and humanity. God and human nature joined in a single person. A miracle that didn't degrade God, but rather elevated, lifted up human nature. The passion, death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus are in a way a single act in which God lifts human nature beyond the grasp of sin and death and makes it fit to live in the presence of God. As Jesus was lifted up, we can aspire to be lifted up, to live as we put it, in heaven. The question for us is not how Jesus was lifted up, but what might weigh us down and keep us from fulfilling that destiny. Is it fear, anger, or resentment? Is it the need to be right or to be in control? Is it self-righteousness, jealousy, or pride? Is it greed, indifference, or apathy, or addiction to material things? Luke goes on to write that as the apostles were standing there transfixed, two men in white approached and asked, "Men of Galilee, why are you standing there looking at the sky?" It was a good question then, and it's a good question now. Jesus has been raised from the dead and has ascended into heaven and wants us to follow him. As we consider what might help us to join him and what might weigh us down, the place to look is not in the sky, but within ourselves.